Welcome to Veloso Tours, and thank you for attending our webinar on the Mexico, Yucatan, Guatemala, and Belize. My name is Paulo Veloso. I'm the Managing Director of Veloso Tours, and we'll go through the various participation events that we have now during the webinar. And so I will have a little introduction on Veloso Tours and the Yucatan. And then my colleague Juan Martinez is in Mexico City at the moment. He will speak after me. Then my colleague Nick Goodchild is going to talk to us about the Yucatan. And Berenice is going to talk about Belize. Then I will talk about Guatemala again and some of our tours. Then at the end, we'll have a question and answer session. So if you have any questions, please use the Zoom feature and the chat to send questions to Berenice, and she will collate the questions, and then we will answer them. Also, from a technical point of view, it's probably best if you use the view button on Zoom and set it to full view and speaker. Maybe you will have seen that. Veloso Tours is a specialist in Latin America, and our ethos really is to provide authentic experiences. And we do that by emphasizing your interests and enhancing your visit when you travel, by sharing an understanding of local life, people, and culture. In particular, we specify the guides that we use and that will be meeting you, so you know who's meeting you, and that's why we have Juan, who is our main guide in Mexico City. We're not going to talk much about COVID, because this situation is ever changing, and the situation will be whatever it is at the time when you travel or you may wish to travel. Other than to saying that we're not expecting anyone to travel immediately, of course. So we have flexible booking conditions that will enable you to inquire, to make plans for travel later. And we also wanted to emphasize that there is travel insurance that covers COVID, so you can travel and make plans in confidence. And at the moment, actually, there's no need to pay any deposits, so it's a good time to plan for the future. During this year of the last year, we've had time to prepare a new brochure for Latin America, and also make significant improvements to our website, which includes a number of new tours, new images, and new itineraries, as well as a feature that allows you to download the itineraries, set a date, and then experiment with the duration to see where you would be, how long for in each destination, which allows you to see how busy you would like to be, the itinerary to be, the pace of travel, which has a day-by-day summary with all the details of how an itinerary would be. So any of the tours that we feature on the website will allow you to do that. And we have been very busy, as you can see, they're specializing in Latin America, India, and China. This is a picture that I took maybe 18 months ago. No, yeah, more or less 18 months ago in the street of India. And as you can see, having a haircut there on the side of the street, and the man behind is shaving. And this is what we feel is one of our strengths in seeing local life, people in everywhere we travel. They were really nice people in India, and very friendly. So this is something that we like to continue throughout everything we do. Here in Mexico, as you can see, this area in the south of the Yucatan Belize and Guatemala is quite a compact area that has many different interests, and it's a wonderful combination where we're going to talk about those in more detail. And so when you fly in, one of our, as I mentioned, one of our uniqueness factors is the fact that the guide will meet you and then will give you a briefing surrounding the area where you are staying. So for example, if you were staying in the center of Mexico City, we have one now in the Zócalo. And so over to you, Juan. I'm going to pass it over to you. Sorry to just a bit of technical here, details to bring in Juan.
I think Juan has to unmute. Yeah, perfect.
Can you see me now?
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to take my mask away so you see me. I am Juan Martinez from Mexico City. I am Veloso's tour guide. You can see here in my talk. Veloso's tour guide. We are now located in the Constitution Square. Although everybody says El Zócalo, Z-O-C-A-L-O, El Zócalo, where the Aztecs started Mexico Tenochtitlan, or Mexico City. Right in front of us is the cathedral. Since Mexico is a Catholic country, this is a Catholic cathedral. It was constructed with a stone of the pyramids. The Spaniards defeated the Aztecs, the locals, and then they were converted into slaves, and they destroyed their own pyramids and used this masonry to build the cathedral and to build other government edifices. Where is today the cathedral? It was a pyramid dedicated to the god of the wind. Also, it was demolished and used the stone for the construction of the cathedral. Now we are walking towards the east, because you see that yellow building in the corner. That's the first university existed in the Americas. It was started by Charles I of Spain and V of Germany, who was the king of Spain when Mexico was conquered by the Spaniards. Then if you walk, we are going to walk, because I'm going with you all the time. We are going to walk and see the remains of the main pyramid of the Aztecs. That at the bottom of that building you see still remains. The pyramid was used, the stone was used to build the cathedral and the government buildings, but still we can see remains of that. In that place exists a restaurant overlooking the Templo Mayor. We call it the Templo Mayor, or the main temple. Overlooking the Templo Mayor is a restaurant where you can have your lunch or your dinner. Then we walk to the east. We are now walking to the east. This is today the National Palace. It's known as the National Palace, where Moctezuma used to live. Moctezuma was the king of the Aztecs at the time of the Spanish arrival. And Cortés converted, demolished part and remodeled it and converted it into a European palace. And it was the offices or the house of Cortés. Later it was by the viceroys who came to Mexico. Finally, also Maximilian. Maximilian used it as his offices. But finally today is used by the president of Mexico, who uses as his habitation and also of his offices. In the center, maybe you see the Liberty Bell. We finally were liberated in 1810 from the oppression of the Spaniards. And I'm walking towards the southeast, that building that you see with the jacarandas, beautiful flower. That's the Supreme Court of Mexico. Mexico is ruled by three powers: the Supreme Justice Court, the Congress, and the President of Mexico. In that, outside that building is a monument dedicated to the foundation of Mexico City, to the eagle with the snake on the cactus. It's a long story. I tell you, when you are here, I tell you all the stories of these monuments. This on the south is the city hall. The city hall where the ruler of the city, we don't say city mayor, we call it the chief of the government, because that's what the Congress says, chief of the government, who rules the city for 6 years. And then southwest is the hotel, Ciudad de Mexico, one of the oldest hotels in the country, in the city. And all of this section in the west as private. The other three sections, north, east, and south, belongs to the government. In the corner with Madero and the Constitution Square, where you see that green curtains in the window and green canopy, that's the Hotel Majestic, another of the suggested hotels. And now here in the center is the Mexican flag, right in the center. It is said that it was located where the Aztecs saw the eagle with the snake on the cactus. Then we walked a little more to the west. So you see the Hotel Majestic, and then to the right, you see the Hotel Zócalo Central. And then something very unique that I don't know if you have it in your country, that building with that kind of a red house on top is the National Pawn Shop. What that means? Well, many times, particularly after vacations, after Christmas, the Mexicans run out of money. Then they come here and you bring your wedding ring, or you bring something value, and they lend you money. When you have the money, you pay them back, and you get your ring back. This is a little bit of the city tour that we are going to take here. Once you are here, I'm going to wait at the airport and drive you to the hotel, and next day we visit this. The recommendations is that this is safe, totally safe around. I will say 3-4 kilometers all around, totally safe. Lots of vigilance, lots of people. This is the heart of the country, the heart of Mexico, of the whole country. And is the capital of Mexico, Mexico City. Now we turn around all the way. Now we come back to the cathedral. I am Juan Martinez, Veloso Tours guy in Mexico. I wait for you here. We have a lot to show to you. This is a wonderful country with lots of history and lots of legends and a lot to show to you. Thank you very much. Now my friend Nick is going to tell you about Yucatan, about the Mayas. Thank you, Nick. You hear me?
Yes, thanks very much, Juan, live in Mexico City. I'm just going to try and take control of the screen here. Bear with me 1 second. So hello everyone, good afternoon. My name's Nick and I'm going to talk to you about the Yucatan Peninsula, which, as you can see here, this is a slightly more close-up map of the one that we saw earlier of the whole of Mexico. The Yucatan is this part of Mexico that sticks out really into the Caribbean, so a large part of it is coastal. And I'm going to take you through a quick canter through the main reasons that you might want to visit this very diverse and fascinating region. First of all, the colonial heritage in the cities and towns and haciendas, the fascinating Mayan ruins, which are really scattered all over the peninsula. There are many there to visit. Wonderful nature and wildlife viewing opportunities as well. Of course, and the Caribbean beaches, lovely beach resorts there, beautiful sort of soft white sands, turquoise waters, a wonderful place to end your trip, perhaps with a couple of days of relaxation. To give you a little overview, there are direct flights from London to Cancun. It takes about 10.5 hours. There are also indirect options that would go via Mexico City, for example, so that you can see Juan first and understand about that part of the country. Or you can also come in via the USA, maybe if you wanted to make a stopover that way. Once you get there, because the region is fairly compact, there are really no internal flights required. Everything is driving distance. To give you an idea, if you can see just here, Cancun is where the main international airport is. From here over to Merida, it takes about 3.5 hours by road. And then from Merida down to Campeche would be another 2 hours or so. So really very simple to get around by road. And this is one of the things that makes it quite suitable for a self-drive itinerary that we'll speak about a little bit later. Failing that, if you would like to have private drivers, we can arrange private drivers to take you all around the peninsula. So moving on from here on to why you might want to visit. The colonial cities, as I mentioned, fantastic and very well preserved Spanish colonial architecture, so that you really feel surrounded by history there. There are wonderful cultural activities with museums, festivals, local music and dance, opportunity to really experience authentic local life with markets, trying local food, for example, and also wonderful character hotels. There are some converted historical houses and haciendas where you can stay and again be surrounded by that history. So kicking off with Merida, this is really the cultural capital of the Yucatan, and our suggestion is that you might want to spend a good 2 or 3 days here, if not more, because there's so much to see and do both in the city and as day trips around outside the city. It's made up of these wonderful grand tree-lined squares. You can see there at the back of the picture the cathedral, and on the left the colonial era town hall. There are frequent cultural events in the city. Here you can see the wonderful colourful outfits of the ladies and gentlemen, and these kinds of dances might happen, you know, on any given day or evening while you're there in the city. It's not just at a particular time of year. You can visit the local markets to see and even try some of the local exotic fruits and vegetables, and perhaps even visit with a guide as the prelude to taking a cooking class and learn how to make some of the local delicacies. There are excellent museums in the city. This is an art exhibition actually in the town hall that you saw the outside of earlier, and this is where actually it's absolutely worthwhile having one of our expert local guides with you to take you behind the scenes and not just go to the main tourist sites. There are wonderful squares with cafes and restaurants for al fresco dining, lovely place to sit out in the evening, the warm balmy evenings there, and a really good range of restaurants there to, again, try the local food. And a good range of character hotels. This is the atrium of one of the historical hotels that's just a couple of blocks from the main square that you saw earlier. So really good accommodation options, character accommodation options there as well. Moving on to Valladolid. This is a slightly smaller town. It could be visited either on a day trip or between two places, or you might try to decide to spend a night or two there, because it's also very well located for visiting several ruins, including Chichen Itza that we'll come on to a bit later. It's well located between Cancun and Merida, so it could make for a tactical stop. Wonderful, imposing cathedral there on the main square. Again, wonderful Spanish colonial architecture. It's a fairly quiet town, and there's really only one or two hotels that we would suggest. This is one of them. It's also got a lovely restaurant in the courtyard that makes a great stop for lunch, which I did when I was there, and we had the traditional Mexican guacamole that you can see being prepared there on the right-hand side. Moving on to Campeche, another beautiful colonial city. This is a walled colonial city on the Gulf of Mexico side, so on the western side of the peninsula. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, designated so for its incredibly well-preserved colonial architecture. And here again, we would suggest spending a good 2 or 3 days, both to walk around the city itself, but also to visit the nearby archaeological sites. You can visit the original colonial forts and ramparts, and here, for example, you can see the Sea of the Gulf of Mexico beyond. Very easy to wander around the cobbled streets, take in the wonderful pastel-coloured buildings, again, beautiful colonial architecture, amazing, impressive colonial era churches. That's me a couple of years ago, photographing yet another church. There are also, again, very good historical hotels within the walled colonial city at a sort of a range of levels and price points as well. But you'd be within walking distance from pretty much everything there. And again, lovely places to sit outside, admire the architecture, watch local life, people wandering by, etc., on an afternoon or an evening. Worth mentioning also that Campeche has an excellent museum on Mayan architecture for people who are particularly interested, including explanations of the inscriptions that they had there, and artifacts like jade burial masks and original Mayan jewelry that were found within the temples. So that's worth visiting if you're particularly interested in the Maya, that we'll speak about a bit later. Moving on to Izamal. This is more of a day trip, short distance, only about an hour away by road from Mérida. The particular thing to see here is the Franciscan monastery, which you can see in the picture, which was completed in 1561, so almost 500 years old. It's a major Catholic pilgrimage site, and in fact, there have been a number of miracles attributed to statues of the saints that are found there in the monastery and the adjoining church. So absolutely worth visiting there to see the monastery and church, but also wander around. A lot of the city is painted that sort of wonderful golden yellow colour, so that's why they often call it the Yellow City. And you can go there, browse the craft market, for example, as well, or even take a horse and carriage ride around the town. Worth mentioning also the historical haciendas. There are a number of haciendas, these sort of ancient farming estates, as they are known, which have been converted into luxury accommodation, often outside the town, so you're in slightly more remote locations, but very peaceful surroundings, plenty of outdoor space with swimming pools, for example, verandas to sit out in, but still pretty well located for visiting the archaeological sites, for example, so can make a good base if you'd like to spend a little bit of time outside of a city as well as visiting the cities themselves. Moving on then to another main reason for visiting the Yucatan is the world famous Mayan ruins. You've got impressive pyramids of different sizes and styles all around the peninsula, incredibly well preserved stone carvings. Some of the structures you are able to climb and look out around the surrounding forest. And here also at these sites is where you can notice the benefit of having one of our expert local guides that really bring the legends, the stories of the Mayas and their beliefs to life, rather than trying to decipher the information boards. The guide will really bring it to life and explain the Maya civilization to you. Starting off with Chichen Itza, the world-renowned site, UNESCO World Heritage Site, of course, best known and most visited site probably in the Yucatan. Our recommendation is to stay overnight nearby and visit early in the morning. So not only will you beat the crowds of day trippers that often come from the beach resorts, but you can also beat the midday heat as well. It gets quite hot, particularly in the middle of the day. So if you get in first thing, spend a couple of hours on the site, then you're out and having lunch somewhere by the time it gets very hot in the middle of the day. This is the most famous pyramid you may be familiar with, the stepped pyramid known as El Castillo, or the castle, but it's much more than this. It's an incredibly extensive site. This, for example, is the restored ball court that was used for playing the Mayan ceremonial ball game. There are lots and lots of stone carvings, very well preserved. This one of snakes and eagles and warriors sort of intertwined. Next up, we have Uxmal. This is a day trip from Mérida, quite close by to Mérida, or again, you could stay at a hacienda just outside to get in early, as I suggested for Chichen Itza. Also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This is the oval-shaped Pyramid of the Magician, so-called. But you can start to see the size of the site here as well. Again, incredible stone carvings. That on the left is a sort of repeated representation of Chak, the rain god. And you can see throughout incredible stone carvings, extensive ornamentation, and surrounded by forest as well. So absolutely worthwhile visiting there and spending a good couple of hours with your guide wandering around the site and admiring the carvings and the structures remaining. Moving on to Tulum, this is a slightly smaller site, but the only one overlooking the Caribbean. So you've got the stunning combination of the temples overlooking the turquoise seas and soft white sands. Because it's on the coast, this makes a very easy day trip from a beach resort and can also be combined with a number of other things. Next, we're going to move on to Palenque, which is a little bit further away from the other sites that I've just mentioned, but an absolutely stunning Mayan site in the eastern foothills, also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. As you can see from the picture, it's a very extensive site. It's surrounded by atmospheric jungle. There are pyramids here, even pyramids that you can climb. As you can see from this picture, and in the temple at the top, you can even see the reconstructed frescoes inside. And here's a picture of me exploring the ruins, taking pictures when I visited a couple of years ago. It's also worth noting that there is a fantastic visitors centre just outside the ruins at Palenque, which show many of the artifacts that were found in the burial tombs there, and a really good description and explanation of what they thought the inscriptions meant, etc., things that they removed when they were exploring the site originally. Next up, Kohun Lidj. I mention this only as an example of smaller, lesser visited sites. There are many of these around, a little bit more off the beaten track, if you like. And if you visit these, they're very quiet. You have them almost to yourself, often surrounded by forest, but still, as you can see there, very beautiful ornamentation, stone carving. At Kohun Lidj, for example, you have these extraordinary stucco masks that have been preserved. But in many of these, the smaller sites, the lesser known sites, they still have stunning ornamentation and absolutely worthwhile seeking out if you're interested. They tend not to be included in our set itineraries, but if you are interested, we can tailor them into your trip. Moving on then to another main reason to visit the Yucatan, which is for the nature and wildlife. You have a variety of opportunities for cave swimming, for example, but also nature and bird watching in the rainforest reserves, coastal lagoons and mangroves as well. So the cave swimming, these are in what are called cenotes. They are literally limestone sinkholes where the water has eroded the limestone and formed these large pools. Some of them are quite open, like this one that you can see here. Others a little bit more enclosed, so it's more like swimming in an underground lake. As you can see in the picture on the right here, some even have platforms that you can jump into the water as well if you feel like a little adrenaline rush. Calakmul is a ruin. It's a very extensive archaeological site, but it's also surrounded by an enormous UNESCO World Heritage Biosphere Reserve. The city itself was one of the most important Mayan city-states, and they had a great rivalry with Tikal in Guatemala, which I'm sure Paulo will talk to you about in a few minutes. But the Biosphere Reserve connects the forest of the Yucatan with that of northern Guatemala, making one of the largest rainforest areas in Central America. Really extensive wildlife watching opportunities. These are some of the pictures that I was able to take when I visited there. On the left you have the ocellated turkey, which is native to the Yucatan Peninsula. In the center, if I remember rightly, that was a white-bellied sea eagle, and on the right-hand side, the very recognizable woodpecker. Lots of bird watching to be done there, but also mammals like howler monkeys, as you can see on the left, and managed to see a deer there as well. There are populations of big cats like jaguar, puma, and ocelot. Those are quite rare to see, so although they live there, you're unlikely to see them, and that's the reason that I didn't manage to get a picture of them either. But if you're keen on wildlife and nature, absolutely worthwhile travelling a little bit further to visit the Calakmul Reserve. Celestun Lagoon is just a short trip away from Merida. You would go there on a day trip, for example, and it's famous for its flamingos, as you can see here. The flamingos are there year-round, but sometimes in smaller numbers. So if you want to see large numbers like you see in the picture, it's best to visit from November to about March time. And what you do when you get there is you would go on a boat trip, for example. This is my colleague Berenice, who you'll hear from in a minute. When she was in the Yucatan, she went on a boat trip through the mangroves there and was able to see this lovely white ibis also. And then coming on to the Siangkan Biosphere Reserve, that's another UNESCO natural heritage site. This is just next to the area of Tulum and the town of Tulum, so it can be combined on a day trip from one of the beach resorts, for example. Wonderful lagoon area where you would take a boat trip, for example, through the wonderful turquoise waters and spot birds and also possibly turtles in the lagoon there, so makes a lovely day trip. And finally, the exquisite Caribbean beaches with the soft white sand that you find up and down that very long coastline from Cancun downwards. There are a huge variety of hotels and resorts, etc. So I'm just going to mention a couple that we know particularly well. There are exclusive hotels that are more nestled into the forest, as you can kind of see here from this aerial shot, but there are also larger hotels and resorts with plenty of facilities, for example, and are better for children. So do speak to us and we can advise you on what would be best suited to you. The Belmond Maroma is one of our favourites. It's a wonderful luxury hotel, very sophisticated, but without losing its real sort of Mexican sense of style. It's also got a very wide beachfront for the number of rooms it has, so you're always likely to find plenty of space on the beach there to relax. The Dreams Tulum is a larger resort, as you can see from the picture there, several swimming pools. Nice large beach area, but it is a much larger hotel. But that means it's got plenty of facilities also, and it's good for children, and they often have good deals on offer because they need to fill the rooms. The Majical Beach Resort is just on the edge of the town of Playa del Carmen, so this is ideal if you want to be on walking distance from a town. Many of the beach resorts tend to be a little bit further away, and you tend to be sort of quite isolated in the hotel with its facilities. Majical Beach Resort is on the edge of the town, so you can walk into the town if you want to eat somewhere else, for example. And it's set in tropical gardens in this sort of thatched cottage style, a lovely lovely place to stay, and it's got a lovely long beach as well and several swimming pools. And finally, the Casa Sandra. This is on the small island of Holbox, which is just off the northern coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, accessible by ferry, so it is that little bit more remote. This is a boutique hotel, the Casa Sandra, that's often been known as sort of out-of-the-way barefoot paradise. So lovely, a little bit more sort of slower pace of life than some of the other resorts. Again, lovely white sandy beaches there. All the hotels are fairly small, so also can be quite busy at peak times. Coming on to a couple of the suggested tour itineraries that we have to visit the Yucatan. This is our Palapa tour, which is a self-drive tour. As I mentioned earlier, the Yucatan is quite suitable for self-drive holidays for people who want to be more independent. And this is a 10-night trip, almost a whistle-stop tour around the peninsula, starting in Cancun here, going down via Tulum along the coastline, and then coming all the way down here to visit the Calakmul Biosphere Reserve and stay in a place called Xicana. This is where you would stay to be able to do a full day trip into the reserve and see the ruins. Moving on from there, we go up to Campeche, the beautiful coastal city that I was talking about before, up to Uxmal for one night before visiting Merida and spending a full day there. Then finishing off with a night at Chichen Itza and opportunity to visit the ruins at least once, if not twice, depending on your preference, and then back to Cancun. But this tour can also be extended to perhaps stay for a few nights on the beach at the end to relax after your trip. Very, very worthwhile trip if you'd like to be a bit more independent, as I say, with a self-drive vehicle. The Sisal tour, this is much more of a luxurious tour, slower pace, starting off in Cancun and coming over to Merida for 3 nights before going down to Campeche. Then we come back to Merida for another 2 nights with the opportunities to take day trips, visit Uxmal or some of the other archaeological sites near there. Then over to Chichen Itza for the night before finishing for 4 nights at a Caribbean resort. The difference with this tour also is that we use the luxury hacienda accommodation that I mentioned before. So staying a little bit more out of the way, outside of the towns in some cases, and really having a bit more of a relaxing stay, as well as that wonderful beach stay at the end. So those are just a couple of our itineraries. We do have many more on the website and in the brochure, and of course we're always happy to tailor a tour particularly to your interests and preferences, so please do contact us if you'd like us to help you with that. So that was our whistle-stop tour through the Yucatan and the wonderful reasons that you might visit there. And now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Berenice, who's going to speak to you about Belize.
Thank you so much, Nick, for your little introduction about the Yucatan. I am going to just check if the technology is working. Yes, perfect. So hi everyone, my name is Berenice and I'm going to talk to you about the amazing country of Belize. So I have been to Belize, and I must admit that I was very surprised because, as you probably know, Belize is a relatively small country and not very well known compared to the rest of the other countries that you can find in Central America. But it has so much to offer in terms of landscape, wildlife, excursion, or other activities. So as you can see, Belize is situated in the south of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico and on the west coast of Guatemala and just next to the beautiful Caribbean Sea. It is very easy to combine those 3 countries together, Mexico, Belize, and Guatemala. You can cross, there is no anything to really support for the immigration, and you can, see a variety of a lot of things. So, and the Yucatan archaeological sites, in Belize, the rainforest and the wildlife, and in Guatemala, everything, colorful markets and so on. So very good to combine those 3 countries together, but you can also visit Belize itself. So Belize has two distinct landscapes. The first one is rainforest, which is approximately 80% of the country. It is covered by mountains, swamp, tropical jungle, and pine forest. And then the second landscape is actually stunning white sandy beaches with palm tree and crystal water. And this beautiful landscape is actually located on the coast and on the islands, because Belize has more than 200 islands on the Caribbean Sea. So this is the two landscapes that you can see in Belize in these pictures. They offer amazing habitat for wildlife and bird watching. Belize also have some cultural attractions, so lots of Mayan ruins such as Caracol and Lamanai, which are the two most famous archaeological sites of the country. And then this is also the home of the Garifuna cultures. So the Garifunas are the descendants of slave people who came from Africa during the colonial time. And this is this lady that you can see on the left, and you can see them and meet them and know more about the tradition when you stay on the coast on a little village such as Hopkins or Placencia. I am now going to talk about the 4 top attractions and things you can do in Belize. The first attraction is the rainforest. So as I previously mentioned, it's 80% of the country, and 75% of this rainforest is actually protected by the government. So in terms of, landscape, you will see cloud forests, caves, river, and waterfall. And it's also full of wildlife, and it's not very unusual to see monkeys, tapirs, or even jaguars. And regarding bird watching, a lot of bird watching opportunity, amazing bird life, and you can see toucan or even happy eagles. Our favorite lodge in the rainforest area is Shakrik Lodge. It is located in San Ignacio, which is the west of the country, not very far away from Guatemala. It has 23 palm-thatched cottage rooms set in a stunning private reserve. So it is inside a private reserve belonging to a private owner. And it is alongside a beautiful Mackle River, which is the longest river in Belize. On site, you can enjoy a luxury spa and infinity pool overlooking the rainforest, as you can see on the pictures. There's also a horse stable, a butterfly exhibit, and an organic garden. So when you go to the restaurants, you can enjoy organic fruit and vegetable from their own garden. A lot of activity to do there. You can do canoe on the Mackle River, biking, horse riding, but one of our favorite activity is actually exploring the rainforest trail. So you just walk around and spot wildlife and bird. As you can see on that pictures, landscape is pretty amazing. Then we're going to the second region that you can find in Belize. It is the Montane Pine Ridge region. It is covering approximately 400 square meters. And as you can see on this picture, the landscape is very different than the rainforest. So it's pine forest, granite hillside, and you do also find caves and waterfall. Slightly different exotic wildlife as well there. You can see crocodile, tapirs, or even ocelots. And this is also where you can see a lot of Mayan ruins, such as Caracol, which is one of the most famous archaeological site of Belize. Used to be one of the most important political centers of the Maya loyans during the classic period. So it is this picture that you can see on the right. Our favorite lodge in that region is the Blancano Lodge. Actually, Blancano is the movie director Francis Ford Coppola retreat. It is located alongside the stunning Privacen River. So as you can see on that pictures, you will have the river and your little cabana, and you can relax overlooking this beautiful landscape. Just actually on the left of the picture, you can see this pine tree. So really different than the trees that you will find in a tropical jungle. So this Blancana Lodge include 20 villas and cabanas full of character and style, as you can see on these pictures. And there's also a lot of activities that you can do, such as biking, caving, horse riding, or even walking on the natural trails and just enjoying the beautiful landscape. I put that pictures as well here because you can really see the different landscape with the rest of the rainforest that you can find in Belize. The third region that you can visit in Belize is the Orange Walk region, which is the northern district of the country, really near the Yucatan Peninsula. So if you combine Mexico with Belize, you will have to stay a couple of days in this region. So there you have a stunning Mayan ruins, such as Lamanai, as you can see on that pictures, is the most famous and the most beautiful archaeological site of Belize. But it is also the place when you can see the cultures of the country. You can find few colonial towns, and it is also famous for festival, delicious gastronomy, and colorful market. One of our favorite lodge in this region is the Lamanai Outpost Lodge. It is situated on the bank of a spring-fed lagoon. So when you arrive by boat. It's about 10 minutes boat trip. So as you can see on that pictures, you arrive and you will see a beautiful jungle, like tropical jungle with cabanas. So it's really like a jungle experience that I will highly recommend. It is relatively simple accommodation, as you can see on the pictures, but it is, as I previously said, wonderfully authentic jungle experience, so really worth it. Surrounded by an incredible variety of habitats, so it's perfect for adventures, activity, such as walking or even bird watching. And obviously, it is very close to the Maya ruins temple of Lamanai, so the most beautiful temple and archaeological site of Belize. Finally, the fourth regions that you will visit in Belize is the Barrier Reef region, which is actually the second largest coral reef in the world after Australia. So amazing marine wildlife. You can easily swim with manatees, rays, turtles, or even shark. So it's pictures of me here. You can see I'm swimming with the sharks here on the right. And then on the left, I just put that pictures just for you to see the kind of landscape you can see. So coconuts, palm tree, white sandy beach, and crystal water. So to visit these regions, there are two options. You can even stay on one of the 200 islands of the country. Our two favorites are Ambergris Caye or Caye Caulker. We do recommend to stay in Ambergris Caye because it's a little bit more comfortable and the hotels are a bit better than on Caye Caulker. Caye Caulker will be more let back and more, backpacker, but it is also an option if you want to stay on an island. And the second option to visit this beautiful Barrier Reef region is to stay on the Caribbean coastal village in the south of Belize, in villages such as Placencia or Hopkins. So one of our favorite lodge in the islands of Ambergris Caye, so if you take the option of staying on an island, is Victoria House. Victoria House is small, exclusive plantation style resorts. So as I said, it's situated on Ambergris Caye in one of the most beautiful beaches of the island. It's just bike ride away from the lively town of San Pedro, so you can go by bike or you can take a golf car because there's no car on the islands. So you can just take those two transport to go to the San Pedro. It's about 2 minutes away, and it's a very lively town. You can easily, go out for a drink or meet local people, go to restaurants there. It's very nice experience and very close, obviously, from this hotel. It is perfect for honeymooners, couples, or even scuba diver because it's really along this barrier reef, so you can spot plenty of marine wildlife. You can also take, if you want, a romantic sunset cruise. Our second large that we particularly like is the Turtle Inn. So this one is actually situated on the country mainland, on the coast, on the little village of Plasencia. It is actually also the Francis Ford Coppola retreat, and it is a good option for people who want to combine the beach and also the country's interiors by staying, you know, a few days there and just do both together, because it's actually easier to get to the country interiors if you stay on the coast. So it is actually 28 Belize inspired cabana, and it is really nestled between the jungle and the longest reef. So as I said, you can combine those two type of landscape together. A lot of activities there, and one of our favorites is actually canoeing. You can do some canoe on the mangroves. It's not very far away from the lodge, and you can spot a lot of bird and a lot of wildlife there. So regarding our tour, we do have one tour with covering the whole Belize. As you can see on the map, there is no direct flight from the UK to Belize. You have to go through the US via Miami. So you fly usually from London to Miami. It's a direct flight. You stay one night there to avoid rushing between the two flights. So you can even stay on an airport hotel, or you can actually go on Miami Beach, very depending on what is your preference. We can arrange that easily. And then from Miami, the next day you fly to Belize City, which is the capital. Then you drive for about 3 hours to reach your lodge in the rainforest. So for example, Sha Creek. You stay there for nights. You enjoy, you know, the beautiful landscape and activities there. And then you drive to the Mountain Pine Ridge region, which is about 2 hours away from your lodge in the rainforest. You stay there 3 nights, and then from there you go back to Belize City and take a flight to one of the keys. And here we took the example of staying in Ambagris Key for about 4 nights at Victoria House, for example. So it's a very nice tour to really enjoy the whole Belize. I obviously mentioned previously some of our favorite lodges, but we do have a lot of options. So feel free to contact us if you want to have more information. For example, on the Mountain Pine Ridge region, we do have another very nice lodge called Hidden Valley. So this is something that we can rearrange if you are more a little bit on budget, or if you want to have a different experience, and that's something we can easily tailor-made for you. So I think that's it for me and for Belize, and now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Paulo, who will talk to you about the beautiful country of Guatemala.
Paulo, you're on mute.
Thank you, Berenice. As you can see here in Guatemala, the character and the main attraction is very different from Mexico and Belize, and it complements all the regions that we have been talking about before. Here, there is a much greater influence of local people's own traditions and identity and character, and mixed with Spanish colonial heritage. There are forest area blends with Belize and Mexico, and so you have the same opportunities for bird watching and the same archaeological sites. Different city-states that competed with each other. They had actually all been abandoned by the time the Spanish arrived. It's one of the big mysteries, is why all these very powerful city-states and civilization was decadent and abandoned, in fact extinct almost when the Spanish arrived. And you have this combination of colonial architecture. The main cities that we'll talk about is Antigua, which was the old capital before the capital was moved to Guatemala City. Chichicastenango, which is one of the main market towns, which is very interesting, and villages around Lake Atitlan, and Flores, which is in the Petén, in the jungle, in the forested area. In Livingston, we're not really going to talk about. It's on the Caribbean side. It's quite far it'll be for another time. So Guatemala City, as I mentioned, is a modern city. We tend not to stay there for any length of time because there's just so much more character in Antigua. But there are some hotels near the airport, and obviously it's the town you arrive at, the airport you arrive at and leave from. So sometimes it may be necessary or beneficial to stay by the airport before taking a flight early in the morning, or if you arrive late. So the main attraction is Antigua, and here, as you can see, you have local people, cobblestones in the streets, and type of architecture which has interior courtyards. And many of these houses have been converted into cafes, shops, and antique shops that convert into restaurants or cafes. There are markets, so you can wander around bars. So it's a good town to explore with a main square, and to kind of get this feel of the character of Guatemala. And you can see here this lady with one of the traditional tops. They're called huipiles, and they used to have a pattern kind of associated with each village. So each village had its own design, and they're beautifully colorful textiles. So one of the places we favor most of all is outside Antigua in San Antonio de Aguascalientes, a lady called Carolina who has a textile shop, and where the textiles are made in the traditional way, made by hand. And she has a wide variety of huipiles and weavings, from the old traditional ones that she will not sell for all the money in the world, to more modern designs, which are under influence from the United States, patchwork. This is the bed covers, jackets, all sorts of things that you can actually use when you come back. I have a very nice jacket that I use, a patchwork jacket and a bed cover. And we're going to see here later on that how we can use those. So these are some of the markets in Antigua, local character. This is an example of what's behind in the interiors, and it's a hotel called Posada del Ángel, which has wonderful character inside, and antiques. President Bill Clinton actually stayed there when he was in Guatemala, and it's an example of the kind of character that you find in other hotels. And this is an example of the huipiles, how they are used as decoration on the walls. And it's actually our office, just to show you how we have actually taken some of these huipiles and placed them on the wall with mounted with a light shining on it. Brings a lot of color and joy into the room, so that we are not just surrounded by technology here. Now, one other thing that I would like to mention about Antigua is Easter processions. They have a very strong tradition from Thursday night through to Sunday of having different processions, different character, different styles, different dress code, and they have this tradition of creating these tapestries on the ground made of colored sawdust and petals in order to prepare the ground for the procession to come through and walk over and destroy it. And it's a very interesting place to spend Easter. As you can see here, this one is very elaborate, and people can join in. You can join in. It's sort of really community activity, where some streets have better ones than others, and some streets have none, and people gather together to do this with a stencil and then making this. It's excellent activity and a great character. And then you can see the processions are very fervent. Chichicastenango is a main town, a market town. Although it is a town that has lots of things that tourists can purchase, it's also a town where local people do go and market. So there's a genuine market. It's not just made for tourists. And here you can see on the footsteps of the main church where people are offering some local produce and flowers in their traditional clothes. It's very interesting to visit on a Saturday night, and you stay in a hotel in Chichicastenango, which is also converted colonial house with arches and interior courtyard where they're playing the marimba band, so that it gives you an atmosphere of market day and market town. Lake Atitlan is a very interesting landscape in itself because of the lake and the surrounding mountains, but it's also interesting from the point of view of the villages around the lake and the character of the villages, which blends the traditional, as we're going to see, with modern, and a sort of number of hippies who are there, and kind of, it's a juxtaposition of several different identities. So it's an interesting place to go. This is an example of Santiago Atitlan, which is across the lake from Panachel, where we normally stay. And we do a boat trip across the lake and then a walk through Santiago Atitlan. This is the character of the people in the area with the huipiles and looking out onto the lake. And this is the contrast where you have a swimming pool in an environment where you overlooking the lake and the character hotel, but modern facilities. This is one example of the fervent strength of character of the local people. It's essentially a puppet sitting on a chair, like a lord, sort of double-breasted in some cases. It's a Spanish lord, but they have many different representations. This one looks more like a cowboy, but it's supposed to be a lord to whom you can come. They come and make offerings in order to fulfill their wishes. So it's a sort of deity mixed in with sort of a colonial lord. And this is passed from village to, from family to family within the town. This one in Santiago Atitlan has one. I went to see one in Zunil, and it was very interesting to see the beliefs of the people and how serious and fervent they are about it. Of course, as we all mentioned, Guatemala also has these archaeological sites. Slightly different design, different character, and that's why it's interesting to see a number of them. They're not all the same. They're actually quite different in the type of pyramids. And each city-state made its own different types of pyramids. So here in Guatemala, you have Tikal, Ceibal, Aguateca, and Copan, which is in Honduras, and Quirigua, which we're going to go through. So Ceibal and Aguateca we're particularly mentioning because they are not so well excavated. You still have mounds of stones covered with trees, where very much is how they were abandoned. The cities were abandoned, and then the jungle encroached onto the buildings and covered them in forest and earth, but some partially excavated and some not. It's actually quite interesting to see that. In the case of Aguateca, they used this ravine as a barrier. It's a period of decadence for protection, and it's unusual because it's the only one. And you can all walk down this ravine. I did that. It's not as intimidating as it looks here. And it's very nice because there's a lot of forest all around and growth and humidity. So maybe these pictures don't do it justice to how it feels to actually reach it and walk along this ravine. But it's one of the lesser visited sites. In order to go there, you stay at Patesh Patun Lagoon, Chimino's Lodge, which is a lodge in the middle of the forest. As you can see here, it's comfortable, albeit rather simple, but it's for one night. On the border with Honduras, you have another archaeological site called Copan, and to go to Copan, you actually go through an archaeological site called Quirigua, and that's quite interesting because they have these representations of zoomorphs, and that's image of a man with a jaguar above, where he's claiming the power of the jaguar. So this is something that is different from other archaeological sites that we have seen. So you combine Copan and Quirigua, and that's a very interesting trip if you want a more in-depth. And again, this site is seldom visited, so it does feel like you're stepping back in time. From there, you would go back to Guatemala City and then fly to Tikal, to Flores. And this is where you find the largest site, surrounded by forest. As you can see here, also several pyramids. It's not just one building. It has a number of buildings around. You stay in a lodge near the site, as a hotel. So you can go in and go in the morning, go in the afternoon, spend as much time as you want walking around these different buildings and through the forest. And one of the highlights is actually to go early in the morning to one of these pyramids that stand high above the tree canopy. And when you go there early in the morning, you have troops of monkeys moving around on the tree canopy, and bird life, because with the disturbance and people's presence in the area, the wildlife find refuge in this reserve area around the pyramids. So it's great for bird watching and watching the wildlife. So as an example of an itinerary in Guatemala, we have an itinerary called Tenango. So 2 weeks where you can stay in Antigua. Sometimes the number of nights is a bit deceptive in relation to the numbers of days, because you actually arrive late and leave early. So 4 nights is actually 2 days, 3 days, I mean. Then Chichicastenango, Antigua, Yucatan, all these destinations that we talked about to cover Guatemala. Or we have a range of tours that we call landmark tours, where you can combine more than one country. And for example, to combine Guatemala and Belize, it's a very interesting combination where they complement each other. So from Tikal, instead of coming back to Guatemala City, you would go across to Chalk Creek in Belize, and then could go to Blanqueno as well. But in this case, you would go to the coast, and you can stay at Victoria House or one of the other hotels, as you can see here. Antigua, Chichicastenango, Lake Atitlan, Tikal, Chalk Creek, and then Hamburguese Key. Or you can do everything that we've been talking about in 3 weeks, and where you have a modern cosmopolitan city like Mexico City, and then you go to the Yucatan, as Nick described, and then you can go to Belize, as Berenice mentioned, and then come to Guatemala. So this would be a 3-week trip. But of course, as we have all mentioned, we can tailor-make itineraries. This is a good example to see what you can do and how busy or how slow you would like to have your itinerary. So we can tailor-make trips for you. And there we are. So if you have any questions, please let us know. Berenice, have we had any questions during the presentation?
Yes, we had one question. It is, what is the best season and the best time to visit those 3 countries?
Well, that's a very good question. So essentially, the rainy season in the Caribbean and the whole of Central America and the hurricane season is essentially from July through to October. Obviously, you don't have hurricanes or rain all the time everywhere, but it's the hotter time of the year, and you have tropical downpours, storms. So the main time of the year to visit is really from November through to June, May, June. And as Nick mentioned, May, June is the hottest time of the year, and it's best to be in the shade during the midday sun, and so visit the archaeological sites early in the morning or late in the afternoon. But from a point of view of when there are the best time to go, I would say, is from November through to June. So is there any other questions? Anything else to mention, Nick?
No, I think we have covered everything.
No, I think that's all covered everything we wanted to say. Just finish by saying, please do give us a call. We'd love to discuss your holiday plans with you and help you make decisions about where you would like to go and tailor an itinerary to suit you. And we look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Well, if you need to contact us, please come back to us. Goodbye. We're going to have to do these again